Welcome to our Facebook Live, where UC Davis health experts answer questions you want to know. Good afternoon, I'm Rebecca Bedeau, and this afternoon I'm joined virtually by Dr. Tran, who is Associate Professor and Senior Director of Clinical Pathology at UC Davis Health. Today we will be discussing all things lab professionals, with a special focus on the testing that our lab team has been leading during this coronavirus. If you or anyone in the audience have a question, please leave it in the chat and we will have some time at the end of our conversation to answer those questions. So Dr. Tran, thanks for being with us and happy Laboratory Professionals Week.
Well, thank you very much. I do want to shout out to our lab team for doing such a great work as they always do, but a happy lab week to them too.
You know, this time of COVID-19 has definitely put a spotlight on the lab. So for those of us who don't know, really what takes place in a lab?
Actually, quite a lot of things, and that's a great question, right? And being out of sight, out of mind is sometimes lab people like. We were that humble group of people that work in the background but produce data and knowledge that helps make medical decisions for about 70% of things out there in patient care. So 70% of medical decisions are based on some sort of lab result. So we're doing millions of tests a year, and a lot of those are done relatively quickly, especially in the lab sections that are.
I know that I'll go to a lab to get blood work done and the blood will get drawn and then it disappears and then I get a result somewhere. But what other types of testing do you do?
So we do a wide range of tests. This could be the biopsies that we review for perhaps malignancies and cancers. We do a variety of blood tests, urine sample testing, even of course the respiratory samples that we've seen out there too. But the laboratory also includes our blood bank team. And of course, the blood bank and apheresis teams, they're heavily involved with obviously the blood products that we use to transfuse individuals, including those convalescent serum that you heard about in terms of COVID testing. So all those are under the laboratory umbrella and under the Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine.
And we'll get to some COVID related questions in a minute, but how exactly do all these tests play into the research that we're doing?
Yes, so we're an academic institution, as everyone knows, and so the research that goes in parallel, because the clinical trials are part of the patient care mission too, because a lot of novel drugs are coming out, both for COVID, but of course for cancer and many other areas. They rely heavily on these laboratory tests. In fact, even more laboratory tests, so that researchers, drug developers, scientists, and so forth have a lot of information to know that these drugs, treatments are actually safe and efficacious.
So I know we're lumping everyone into the lab right now, but as an academic health system, I know there are many disciplines involved. What are all the types of professionals and disciplines that are involved in your lab work?
Sure. So I'm under clinical pathology. I'll name a few, and I'll apologize if I forget one just for the sake of time. But we obviously have our transfusion medicine folks, apheresis. We have our hematopathologists. These are the pathologists that look at the blood cells, right? We have clinical chemists, microbiologists, molecular diagnostic experts, which are playing a big role right now too. Flow cytometry, immunology. We have toxicology. We have special chemistry, which are more special esoteric chemistry tests. We even have point of care testing, which is groups that are sending these devices that are handheld bedside that can actually be used far away, glucose meters, even some respiratory tests too. And that's for the CP side. On our anatomic pathology side, I do have to convey that I'm not an anatomic pathologist, but we have our surgical pathologists and others, and many other sub-disciplines underneath that, looking at breast cancer, renal biopsies. Our renal pathologist deals with a lot of the transplants we do here. So those are some examples there.
So what has the last 2 months been like for all of these professionals in your lab?
Sure, it's been busy. I'm sure some sections may be busier than others because they had to incorporate new workflows to address the COVID-19 testing challenges. But we also have to realize routine patient care still has to happen. Even though there may be less patients, we may be reducing the number of optional procedures and so forth, but patient care still needs to happen. People still get into car accidents. People still get sick for other things. So we still have to perform at the capacity that we've been performing under unique circumstances because social distancing, perhaps work from home for certain individuals. Certain administrative resources are altered. All these elements are adding to a new style of patient care for us. We also have to deal with logistical challenges where supply chains that we've normally relied on, which have been 100% reliable before COVID, are now becoming more challenging because we're now competing against every other hospital in the nation for certain supplies.
Well, I know that our patients and every worker at UC Davis Health is appreciative of everything you've been doing. But how does that social distancing play out in a lab? Because I've got to imagine you don't have tons of space. So how have you adapted to that protocol amid the frenzy of everything you've still been churning out?
Sure. We're lucky that since an academic medical center, we do have a relatively large lab. But as you can imagine, if someone's standing next to each other, look at something under a microscope, or there's an instrument that needs to be loaded while someone's operating the instrument at the same time, there will be close proximity. So we have to, practice, face masks, eye protection, so forth. And we're handling samples that are, that can contain various diseases too, in addition to COVID. So those are part of universal precautions. And of course, we follow the CDC guidelines for COVID-19 too. So we have to practice that. For things such as meetings, we have now reverted to various online streaming, IP related, voice over IP related communications. That has been part of our daily lives. In some ways, I think it is more fast paced because now we just move from Zoom call to Zoom call, WebEx call to WebEx call, rather than have that little break walking between buildings. So I think those are the challenges there. And as we're on these Zoom calls or WebEx calls, emails are pouring in because everyone's also at home, being able to send relatively fast updates. So I think the pace is a lot faster. Obviously, the demands are a lot more unique, but laboratory personnel, pathologists are adaptable people, and we've adapted to it.
Well, something tells me, Dr. Tran, that you can keep up with that fast pace because you probably like that rapidity. Associate professor is also in your title. How has this affected your teaching?
Well, the good news is I personally haven't had to teach my at least main campus class. That's usually in the fall, so we'll see what happens this fall. Maybe it'll be a Zoom class. But on the flip side, we still do teach our residents and so forth, and it's been more remote. I've always had online media, so we've shifted towards that as well, so that our residents can still play a role, both from an educational standpoint and being someone involved in learning from these unique times. But like you said, I'm an associate professor. I wear an academic hat. I also have a research component too. Our research has shifted to full COVID as well, and our teams are my researchers are helping with various trials from other colleagues. They're collecting samples for our own efforts from the hospital side. So we've shifted over to a COVID theme for the last couple of weeks and adapted to that as well.
And really, how has everyone come together on your team? Has it surprised you any? I know you work with these experts every day, but I think in these trying times, we're seeing some really outstanding work that we're like, wow, I didn't realize. How is the team coming together?
The team's coming together amazingly, and this is not surprising. The teams came together in 2015, 2014 for Ebola, so we know what we could do. Obviously, this is a much grander scale, and of course, the challenges, of course, is getting folks to appreciate that this is a big mission, right? This is a big effort, and people understand that. But we get very focused on let's get the test going. Well, let's remember that's all about the patients. And I think everyone really appreciates that and understands that in the laboratory world. And I think knowing that has helped a lot of individuals, everyone on our team, to be able to jump on board and be able to all pretty much paddle in the same direction, as it were, to be able to achieve the goals and the ever evolving goals of the pandemic too.
Well, I'll look at our audience now. If you're just joining us, we are discussing lab professionals and how our lab at UC Davis Health has adapted to be a leader through this coronavirus pandemic. Our guest is Dr. Nam Tran, Associate Professor and Senior Director of Clinical Pathology at UC Davis Health. We welcome your questions and comments in the comment section. We are going to save time for a few of those at the end of this. But let's go to the COVID response right now and talk a little bit about what your team's been doing in the last few weeks. I know you and I sat down most recently when we were talking about the Cobas 6800 instrument from Roche. Tell us a little bit about what that instrument has been able to allow you to do.
Sure. The Cobas 6800, it's pretty much considered a giant robot. The size of it, I think folks that can Google up and and see that it's about the size of a small to medium sized SUV. So it pretty much allows us to automate the steps from beginning to end, from sample loading, testing, and resulting, to be able to do it quickly. And typically, we're looking at batches of 94 patient samples at a time. It turns out results in about 3 hours or so. There's a lot of steps before and after, though. There's steps that as we receive samples, we have to process the samples and load, right? So 3 hours is just how fast it gets you the test results. There's still other steps, and there's a lot of still people parts to it. But with that said, now we could do several batches of 94 over a course of hours and days. You start seeing large numbers of tests, and that's what we need, right? You've seen from the federal response to the federal press conference, and of course the state level conferences saying we need to scale up testing, and it's only achievable by these automated platforms.
Well, and it's interesting too, because were talking earlier about social distancing and those protocols. This machine, um, how does it deal with as far as personnel? Are you able to minimize the number of people who have to be on because of the capabilities of the instrument?
Sure, and I would probably I'll have to give a caveat, but for the most part, it makes better use of our most valuable assets, time, and that's our people. And yes, we have robots doing things, but these are laboratory scientists. Their brains are what is valuable to us, right? Their physical presence is what's valuable to us, and their knowledge. So we want to use these technologies. Now we can then leverage their knowledge and training to then bring up other tests, ensure other tests that are less automated are keep going. I think a lot of the misconception is, oh, let's bring all these robots in. We need less people. Guess what? There's always more testing to be done, right? There's always more patients, so forth, and these people can be better utilized into important areas. In this case, because of the sheer number of COVID tests that we do, the automation allows us to make better use of our time to meet the needs of our patients and of course our community.
I know you got a shout out the other day from Vice President Pence at the White House briefing on the rapid testing being done at UC Davis. Are we unique in this area to have this capability with this instrument?
I mean, it's a shout out for the institution, to be honest. So it's obviously a team effort. So, but the main thing is, I believe last I checked, there's at maybe 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, the numbers definitely have changed because people have started trying to get these instruments. But last there was about 36 of these cobas instruments in the nation. I guarantee there's more now for obvious reasons. It's not easy to get them, not because they're rare. The demand is much higher, but they're very large. They might not fit in the door, so they come in pieces. They have to be constructed together. Then it takes time to bring them online. So these are investments of weeks and months typically to bring online. We're lucky to have one in December for various other reasons. And so I think those are good examples. With that said, there are other automated platforms out there too from other manufacturers. My understanding, this is one of the platforms that does the most throughput, but there are others out there.
We talk about rapidity. I mean, information changes on a daily, if not hourly basis during this pandemic. Um, COVID-19 testing was the first buzz. Now we're into this topic of serology testing. So, what have been the advances of serology, and kind of explain what it is and how your labs will work on this in the future?
Sure. Serology, of course, just to backtrack on this, is pretty much us looking at your response after exposure to the disease, whether you had a vaccine or you had exposure to measles, mumps, rubella, right? And that's why we measure the antibodies we produce, to hopefully confer immunity. And our understanding of immunology is that they should confer immunity. So, what serology testing with COVID-19 is, if you have a positive result, it most likely tells you, you assume it's a good test, that you have had a prior infection of COVID-19. There are limitations to that. We've seen in the media now. There's a lot of rapid tests that use very seemingly convenient finger stick samples, but those may not be ideal. There's reports that they give you false positive results. It might tell you that you've been exposed, but in fact you weren't, right? That you can understand that's kind of concerning for people. So that's why we must rely on these tests that are operating in highly qualified laboratories, such as Davis and other academic medical centers, and regional hospitals too. And so we'll see that coming up, and we have to be cautious in that these tests are not all created the same. The ones that operate by main labs, such as ourselves, are typically higher quality. They've been validated, and at the end of the day, they tell you you've been exposed or not. And maybe sooner rather than later, we'll see some tests that also tell you if these antibodies are produced confer immunity. So still a lot to do, and I know that UC Davis is working on to be able to test our healthcare workers as well as patients and members of the community.
Yeah, so we did have that question actually in advance of us going live at noon today was, are they ready to apply to people and how can we be tested? So is that something that's moving forward in the coming weeks and months ahead?
Yeah, it's moving very quickly actually, and tests are becoming emergency use authorized by the FDA, and so all those are rolling in now as we speak. So very important because one of the reasons why I know a lot of people wanted the test perhaps 4 weeks ago or whatever it is, but remember, not all tests are created equally, and at the same time, our jobs as laboratory experts is to identify, develop, and/or accept the best tests that we can offer for our patients in the community. It's more important to have a good test than just any other test you found off the street.
Well, off the street or off the internet, right? Because there have been a lot of scams that everyone's stay away and trust the experts, right?
Correct. Correct. I think a lot of people, and in some ways, I do understand. You're looking for something they're grasping at straws, and they jump on the first thing they can find. And that's our jobs in laboratory medicine, especially at an academic institution, to know what is best.
Well, where do you see the new normal going for you in your lab, in the coming months? Now that there's hints that there might be some restrictions loosening with the serology tests coming on board, more COVID tests. What's it going to look like? Do you have a crystal ball you can look in and let us know?
Well, hopefully it's not a magic 8 ball, but the reality is that the reality is until we have a safe and effective vaccine, things are probably going to stay a little bit different. It's not going to be the regular norm that we were used to pre-February. And so I would probably say, and we've already been discussing these for weeks, is that the new norm is ensuring that we have measures in place to optimize social distancing where possible. We want to optimize and make it easier and more efficient for folks to be able to work from home. We have to be considerate that our employees, faculty members, colleagues have families too. School may not open up for another couple months, may perhaps even for the rest of the year. So we have to be cognizant of that. Individuals need to take care of their family. So all these things need to be factored in addition to knowing that there is great potential, as far based on what we've heard from the CDC and so forth, is that this virus can come back and perhaps stronger towards the end of the calendar year. So all these things we have to factor in. So as they say, we hope for the best but plan for the worst. That's what we're doing, and I think we've gained a lot of experience over this time and leveraging even prior experience with Ebola and so forth to be very successful in this.
Well, outside of the coronavirus, are there things you're really looking forward to in your lab work and research in the near or maybe not so near future?
So I think I look forward to just less Zoom calls. I think everyone can share with that one. Just a little bit more breaks in between so we can answer our emails, right, to keep the flows going. I either have the fortunate or unfortunate luxury that we do have a global connection. So every now and then I do have to pop in for a call that happens to be at a weird hour because Asia and Europe has to chime in too. So it's been unique, but it's also nice to work with all these colleagues. With that said, it's nice to get back to semi-regular life, to catch up on cleaning. I personally, I have to move to another house soon, so I haven't packed. So my wife has been amazing for making sure that stays going. I'm doing my best, and I think I probably and I just tell her that my gift to her is the house then. So so that'll be the thing. But we do have to get back to the norms. I think all the animals in our house are also eager to return back to norm too, because they don't understand why both of us are at home all the time. So
Like another walk, please. I'm done walking my human for this day.
exactly.
Thank you, Dr. Tran, so much for being with us today. I'm not seeing any initial questions right now, but I'm still going to encourage anyone watching right now, if you do have a question regarding the lab testing that Dr. Tran shared with us today or anything else COVID-19 related, please leave it in the comments and our experts will definitely get some answers back to you. And we encourage you to share this Facebook Live with your family, your friends, anyone who is interested. It's great to have local experts right here in the Sacramento region that are being sought after nationally and internationally. So we're very lucky for you, Dr. Tran, and the rest of the team that you're working on. So thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much. I'm lucky to be here.
And I don't want anyone, yeah, we're lucky to have you. And I also want to remind you for all COVID related questions, I invite you to visit health.ucdavis.edu /corona coronavirus. And then you can read all the latest there. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead. Be safe and be well.